Okay, so a quick summary from yesterday. So we've derived the equation of an ellipse in Cartesian form. Alright, so we've got x squared over a squared plus y squared over b squared is equal to 1. Alright, the a's and b's are significant because one gives you the eccentricity and also will give you the intercepts of the x and y axis. Okay, when you get the eccentricity, you will be able to determine the focus, the coordinates of the focus, and the equation of the directrices. Alright. So for the condition where A is greater than B, okay, so the number in the underneath X is greater than the number underneath Y, we're going to have an ellipse stretched out this way. Okay, so in other words, the foci are going to lie on the horizontal axis. When there's our condition, so that's our relationship between A, B's and E's, and all the information for the foci and the directrices are in your notes. So when the number underneath y is bigger than the number underneath x, okay, so what happens is the foci lies on the vertical axis and the ellipse will stretch out this way. Alright, so the same sort of deal, almost sort of swapping around your x's and y's, a's and b's, and the coordinate location for your focus. Okay, so that's just similar there. And again, there's all your things in your notes about your foci, directrices, and your eccentricity. So those two examples. So we went through some examples there. Those two examples were assuming that the foci was at, the axis of symmetry is the actual x and y axis. Alright, so now we need to look at what happens when we're not at the centre. Alright, so the centre of the ellipse is not at the origin. Okay, so there's your equation. So it's very similar to what we've had for the circle. Okay, so x take away h all squared plus y take away k all squared equals r squared. It's very similar. Alright, so the centre is going to be those two values there, h and k, and that's the equation. Alright, so we're not going to derive that. Going to understand the result here. Okay, so same sort of deal. So when A is greater than B, okay, so we're going to have the foci lying on the horizontal plane there. Okay, and then all these values here will have some value from the centre added. Okay, for example, the directrices. Right, so we have A over E for that, but we also need to add the value for H that we've gone over in the x-axis over this way, etc., etc. So same for your foci. And to find the intercepts, okay, so if you need to find these intercepts, you just simply need to substitute the other variable equals 0. So to find the y-intercept, substitute x equals 0 into the equation, solve for y, and that will have your two solutions there. Right? So obviously there will be situations where there won't be a solution because it will be purely in one of the 4 quadrants, okay, but that's the only extra thing we'll need to do. Okay, so the conditions are pretty much the same. So you've got the same value for the eccentricity. So it's really just a shift of the ellipse somewhere else on your number plane. Okay, so the eccentricity, A's and B's will still stay the same. Okay, the only main differences are the additional bit for your foci and directrices that needs to be considered. Right, so when the value for B, so the value under y, take away k all squared, is bigger than the value underneath x, so take away h. Okay, so again, you're going to have the two foci lying in a vertical alignment with each other. Okay, and again, all your values for your foci, directrices, and axis of intercepts, so will need to change likewise. Okay, so it's really based from that centre point. Alright, so everything works off that. And in your note is a summary of the bits and pieces, how it changes when the centre is not at the origin. Okay, so don't forget we have symmetry as well for your ellipse, so that's why we've got two axes of symmetry, because there's two ways we can fold it in half and get the same thing. And that's the result for that. Right, so that's a quick recap and a bit of an extension from last lesson. Are there any questions on that? Right, so let's focus our time today on answering some questions. Right, so we need to sketch the ellipse. showing the foci, vertices, and any intercepts to the axis in third form. Okay, so we need to first observe which value is greater, the A value or the B value. So? Yes, but we need to know where it's going to lie generally, so that we'll get an idea what we're doing. 4 smaller, the 8 bigger here.
I'm doing it as a fraction now.
No. So this is A squared here. A squared is 8 and B squared is 4. Right, so take the square root of 8, which is going to be still bigger than the square root of 4. Right, so A is going to be bigger than, square root of 8 is going to be bigger than 2, so we need to identify that the foci is going to lie in a horizontal alignment. Okay, then we need to show the foci, vertices, and any intercepts to the axis in third form. Okay, so we've got that shift to the centre, from the centre. Okay, so that's the next thing I'd be considering. What's the coordinates of the centre? Good. Right, so we need to know where the foci, vertices are, but before we can determine those, what do we need to determine first? The eccentricity. Alright, so E squared is A squared, E squared is A squared, take away B squared on A squared because I've observed that A is greater than B. Okay, I'm pretty sure that's the correct formula. E squared, A squared, take away B squared, yep. The problem is we're going to be looking at the hyperbola today and you're going to see some slight changes but very similar results in what's going on. Okay, so it's going to be 8 take away 4 over 8, which is going to be half, so E is going to be 1 on root 2. Which matches our definition of the ellipse because the eccentricity has to be less than 1 for it to produce an ellipse. Okay, so those sort of things we need to keep in mind. Okay, so now we've got the value for eccentricity. Okay, so the foci at, alright, so we've got the H value plus or minus AE and whoops, not 0. Going to be shifted up. Okay. It would normally be on the x-axis, but because it's shifted to the centre, it's going to have a shift up with the K. So, so this is your H, and that's your K. That's what we're dealing with. So we got minus 1 plus or minus A, which is the square root of 8, I'm going to write it in the third form as 2 root 2 because I'm observing that the eccentricity is 1 on root 2 and things will cancel. Okay, 2 root 2 times 1 over root 2 and then we have to shift up 3. Okay, so the foci is going to lie in the same horizontal alignment as the centre. Right, so they can cancel. We've got minus 1, plus or minus 2, and 3. Okay, so the foci is going to be at minus 3, 3, and 1, 3. Alright, vertices at x equals. Okay, so we've got the shift of the centre that we need to consider first, H, and you remember the rest of it. So it's foci A times E, the vertices are going to be A. A over E. Okay, so the direction is the line, so we don't need a coordinate or we don't need a YB. Okay, so minus 1 plus or minus a, which is 2 root 2, and then we're dividing by e, so we're going to multiply by the conjugate. So root 2 over 1. Minus 1 root 2 times root 2, which is 2 times 2. Right. And again, that's going to be further out than where your foci are. We're sketching, yep. And any intercepts to the axis insert form. Right, so we can going to do just a quick rough sketch. I'm not going to worry about detail right now. Right, just making sure we're comfortable with what it looks like, and then while you're doing your exercise, you can focus on your neatness of it. Right, so we've got the centre at -1, 3, so somewhere up there. Right, so the directions are going to be -5 and 3. And the foci at -1, take away 2, -3, and 1, 3. Right, so I wouldn't worry about writing coordinates everywhere. I'll just write the intercepts of the main features of your graph. Okay, so the foci lie inside and the directrices lie outside. So if b squared, from the question, b squared is 4, so b equals 2, that means the minor axis length, the vertical axis length from intercept to intercept, is going to be 2b. Right, so it's going to be 4 units long, so 2 units up and 2 units down, okay? So that's what we're determining, yes. So we've got 3 up and we've got to go 2 down. That means yes, that's why we need to consider that. Right, which helps because it's less work we need to do. Okay, so there will be no x-intercept because we've determined the minor axis length. However, there will be 2 y-intercepts. Okay, so we need to find those values, x, y, Right, so we're finding the y-intercepts, so we're going to substitute x equals 0. Okay, into that equation, so we've got x plus 1 all squared over 8, plus y take away 3 all squared over 4 is equal to 1. So we're going to substitute 0 in for x, so we're going to have an 8. Okay, and then solve for y. So, we've got 1 take away an 8th, which is 7/8. 7/8 times 4. Alright, I can't really tie that up anymore. Hopefully more often than not the calculation will come up much more nicer numbers in terms of what we're doing, but really just making sure you understand the process. Okay, so when, like I said, I can't simplify that anymore, so on your graph, you need to go 3 plus square root of 7 over 2, and here will be 3 minus square root of 7 over 2. Right, so really these graphs need to be much bigger than what I've done there. Alright, so you're going to be at a third of the page minimum, alright, to be able to put clearly the information from there. Okay, so that's not too bad. Right, any questions from that? So did we answer everything? So sketch your ellipse, showing the foci, directrices and any intersecting axes in Swivl. Yep. Right, so sketch and label the foci and directrices of the graph, okay, represented by this equation. Right, so we're under the heading of ellipse, okay, so we must be needing to sketch an ellipse. Right, however, that equation there is certainly not in the form that we recognise. Okay. Now, we remember doing circle question in this form. We had to sketch the circle by completing the squares, etc. So the hint here is the coefficients in front of x squared and y squared are different, so it's not going to produce a circle. Okay, now because they're different, they're going to produce either ellipse or hyperbola. Okay, so what we need to do is complete the square and get it back into that sort of format. Alright, so I'm just going to group thing, 9x squared plus 2x plus 4 okay, and the very nice thing here so far is we can take a nice clean factor out of both x's and y terms to be able to finish completing the square. Right, so what's that to finish the square there? 1. What's this to finish the square here?
16. 4.
The half, then square it, plus 4. So what I've done to the left hand side must also do the right hand side, and you've got to be careful because we've already got a factor of 9 and 4 out. Okay, so this will be 9 and then 4 times 4 to balance it properly. Okay, so 9x plus 1 all squared plus 4 y take away 2 all squared. 11 9 20 plus 3. It looks like the numbers are really working out nicely for us. Okay, we certainly want that to happen. Right, so far so good. What's my next step?
Divide by 4.
1 by 4. Because we need to have the right hand side equal to 1 for it to, so that we can do the work, okay? We need to divide both sides, everything by 36. Right, so divide by 36. Right, so 9 over 9 times what equals 36?
4.
So this will become an x plus 1 all squared on 4, and 34 into 36 goes how many times? Okay, and that's a nice clean equation, and we have a perfect square for a squared and b squared, which works out nicely for our values. Okay, so we need to sketch and label the foci and directrices of the graph. Okay, so this one had an answer for its intercept, so there's one less thing we need to do. So I need to be able to find the foci and the directrices. So before I can do that, I need to do what first?
Find the eccentricity.
Yep, okay. So E squared. Now what do you notice about the values for A and B? Yep, but in relation to each other. Well, B now is bigger than A. Alright, so 9 is bigger than 4, okay, in terms of, so technically 3 is bigger than 2. Alright, so that means the eccentricity formula is going to be B squared take away A squared on B squared. Okay, which has to work because if I do A squared take away B squared, that's going to give me a negative number and I don't need that for my eccentricity. Alright, so that's just going to be the clue on how to determine which value goes where. Right, so be 9, take away 4 on 9, so 5 over 9. Okay, so E is going to be root 5 on 3. Okay, so we're just considering the positive value because the eccentricity is a positive ratio. Right, so now that we've determined the eccentricity, we can now go ahead and determine foci and directrices. So, before we do that, we've got to be mindful that it's going to be in that orientation, right, because if A B is greater than A. So, foci is going to be at H, K plus or minus BE, and the directricity is going to be Y equals K plus or minus B over E. Right, so similar to what's been happening before, we've just got to swap in some of our values. Right. At H, K plus or minus B, E, sorry. So now we're really basing everything on B. Alright, and then HK is -1, 2. Alright, so that just helps us with the overall layout. So -1, 2 plus or minus B. Now remember, this is B squared. B squared is 9, so B is 3. 3 times root 5 over 3. Okay, we always like when things cancel out, make it a bit tidier. So -1, 2 plus or minus root 5 for the foci. Alright. Alright, directrices. Okay, so we're going to intercept the y value. Okay, so it would normally be plus or minus B over E, but because it shifted the centre up 2 units, okay, so y is going to be K plus or minus B over E. So K is 2, so 2 plus or minus B. Remember, B squared is 9, so B is 3. 3, and then we're dividing by a fraction. I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal. Okay, you don't need to go ahead and formally do everything because in mathematics and extension 1 is assumed knowledge from here. Okay. Right, it's going to be 2 plus or minus 9 on root 5. Okay, we won't sketch it because obviously the most important things now are to do the algebra so we can get the eccentricity, we can get the foci, we can get the directrices, we can get the intercepts, etc., etc. Okay, and then once we have that information, generally the sketch is pretty straightforward. Alright, so just to save a bit of time, I will not sketch this example in particular unless you really want me to. Right, are there any questions on the approach? Are you sort of getting how this is all working, etc., etc.? Good. Okay,